Day 617 of the project. While my sanity continues to degrade, progress on Bladewarden is okay. Amongst many other things, I've rebuilt the codebase again, but this time not because I've changed the GUI library, etc. Instead it was for efficiency and maintainability. Overall, the general trend is good, but these figures are a bit misleading. Once I actually get round to expanding these systems I built, like adding in all the event types and construction types I want, the lines of code will increase much more rapidly. But at the moment, it will take a mere 1,563 years for me to reach the amount of code Assassin's Creed Unity ship with. So that's a fun thought, and not at all distressing in any way. I probably should explain where I've been for the last 167 days since the last devlog though. I'm still only working on Bladewarden part-time, as my web dev job takes up Monday to Wednesdays so I can pay the bills, but what really ate into my progress this summer were these darned things people seem to refer to as family and friends. Absolute time vultures they are, especially when they insist on me going abroad for apparently important things like weddings and having babies. So that took more time out of the schedule, and then I also had to do a bunch of extra days at my job to actually afford those trips. All in all, a couple of months were just complete write-offs. But we're back on track now, and I've been able to add in the new construction type and upgrade system. It's decent. Not perfect, but decent. Each hex can have a single construction type built on them. For now, there's only settlements, housing and farms, but each of these constructions can then have multiple different upgrades built on them too. For example, a settlement can have a market upgrade, which generates coin. As part of this feature, I've also built some extra pop-up windows to show construction and upgrade information. As a creator, it's just so satisfying watching these things get added and changed in the world. Finally, a player is actually able to affect things. Of course, I still need to be able to implement more construction rules in, like houses should only be able to be built next to settlements or other housing, but you get the idea. I've also not quite decided what to show when viewing territory that isn't part of your faction, or if anything should ever be built on water hexes, but those are problems for another day. The main pain here was actually implementing this all efficiently. It turns out you really do need to think about how having 40,000 hexes and suddenly allowing them to build an unlimited amount of upgrades on each hex actually gets stored in the data. And more importantly, how the resources for each hex controlled by a faction are counted every game tick. That's like 40,000 hexes times by up to 6 resources times by an unlimited number of upgrades every single game tick. It adds up. This was actually a big part of the reason I did the rebuild. Instead of storing all that data in single location, construction or upgrade objects, I've changed the code to be more data orientated, storing that data in individual arrays instead. It's a bit hard to explain visually, but while less intuitive, it's faster and more maintainable since these systems are now all separated into different controllers instead of having one massive locations controller that tried to calculate everything. As part of the rebuild, I've also restructured the various projects so I can separate the main menu and game files, as well as have a better way to share the code between areas without cluttering them up. But goddamn is it annoying having to change so many systems on your own and having nobody else to blame when it becomes a complete mess, and then having to fix it all yourself as well. Similarly, why the heck is designing GUI menus so hard when there's nobody to offer feedback? It took me so many different tries to think up at the new construction menu. The construction icons kind of happened by complete accidents as I thought they just looked a bit too plain, so I added them to see how they looked. I got somewhere in the end though, although I've since thought of a bunch of improvements but haven't had time to add them. On the bright side, since I've also had to add the system to build constructions and upgrades, I've also added in a way to destroy them. In the future, both the build and destroy actions will take game time to complete, and it will also add in a visual indicator that this is happening on the map and in the GUI. There's also a ton of other less visible changes I've made, such as adding in a faction-wide status effect system, removing the fear resource and replacing it with housing, removing the other generated factions, removing population and population types from hexes, adding in chained events, where one event triggers another, fixing borderless full screen mode, and a whole bunch of other minor fixes. I'll go into more depth about some of these in a future video, but generally I've realised it might be a bit too much work to add in a bunch of challenging enemy AI. So I'm thinking of changing the focus to be a bit more survival-based game mode. But again, that's a discussion for the future. As some of you may have already realised, I didn't quite get through all my previous to-dos from the last devlog, but I did get through the hefty stuff. I even worked a fair bit on the events logic, but just didn't get around to actually adding in any new event types because the construction work took so long. But with the new stuff, because of the continued uncompleted wish lists, I'll take a simpler tack with the new to-dos. My next big challenge is building the new unit bar. That in itself is a huge piece of work. I need to work out all over again how to manage a large list of units on the same hex, as well as ways to recruit them. If, and that's a big if, there is time after that. I'll also add in some of the new improvements I thought about with the construction bar, as well as some of the extra construction and upgrade types I thought of. But yeah, that's about it for this devlog. Do let me know what you think of any of the recent changes. We're getting somewhere slowly but surely, although I'll try and make sure the next devlog is a bit sooner. Until next time, bye!